Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Appreciate you being here today, Tuesday, February the 15th. I hereby call this Subcommittee of Higher Education into order. And let's see, Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representatives Baum, Cochran, Darby, Gillespie, Hakeem, Parkinson, Chairman White, Chairman Lafferty.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you for that. Okay, before we begin, do I have any personal orders? Okay, seeing none. A little bit of housekeeping. We do have several lottery bills today that will end up going on the calendar. Some of those members want to go ahead and present their bills. And Leader Gant has been kind enough, considering the schedule, to roll to the Hill. So the first thing we're going to do is roll that first bill, House Bill 2670, to the Hill of today's calendar, which will quickly move us to item number 2. Let's see. And the sponsor is asked to roll that bill for 1 week. So moving right along here. Brings us to item number 3 by Representative Smith. It's my understanding you want to roll that bill for 1 week, but you would like to be recognized today.
I just want to thank the committee, and we're rolling it 1 week to accept some clarifying language and a friendly amendment. Thank you all.
Thank you for that. Moving right along here. Item number 4 by Representative Ogles. Representative, you going to present today?
No, Chairman and members of the committee. If I can, I'd like to roll this 1 week. I've got some new language, some information from the administration. So I'd like to clarify a couple things and then represent next week, if that be okay.
Easy enough. We'll roll that 1 week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, spoke with Representative McKenzie yesterday. I don't see him currently in the room. Oh, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and roll that bill, House Bill 2602, to the lottery calendar, which brings us to item number 6 by Chairman White, who I do not see in the room right now. Congratulations, Chairman. You could go ahead. We're already to your bill on the calendar. If you'd like to go ahead and present it, if you need a couple of minutes, please take your time. House Bill 2137.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to roll that to the lottery calendar.
Without objection, rolled to the lottery calendar. And moving right along, House Bill 2090, item number 7 on our calendar, also by Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to roll that to the lottery calendar also.
We'll make that happen. Thank you, sir, for that. And wow, just like that, we're back to the top of the calendar again. Leader Gant, House Bill 2670, if you're ready, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and committee, and share the same sentiments as Mark, Representative White, just trying to figure out which bill we're on. I know the sentiment that you're conveying there, so.
I'm sorry, excuse me. And a second, please. We've got a motion and a second. Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. It's a privilege to be before y'all today, and I will try to be as brief as possible because I know we have a very busy schedule. Let me be clear, this is, I'm privileged of carrying this bill for Speaker Sexton. This is an initiative that is dear to him, and he is entrusting me with this legislation. So let's just hope I represent him well as we present this legislation. And I'll kind of go through some of the summary of what this legislation does, and then we can get into some questions if you have questions afterwards. This legislation before you today is an effort to ensure that our public universities' credible diversity efforts aren't undermined by initiatives that seek to drive Tennesseans further apart. In Tennessee, we believe that prosperity is greatly aided by progress towards unity, and we reject the promotion of concepts that attempt to cast a shadow on groups of people due to factors not in their control. The divisive concepts which we are seeking to address may seem familiar to you. These are the same concepts that defined in Public Chapter 493 passed last year, which were prohibited by inclusion in K through 12 curricula. These concepts are defined as such because they declare that one race or sex is inherently superior or inferior to another, declare that race or sex is a determining factor in an individual's moral character, impose guilt and anguish based on an individual's race or sex, declare that the United States is fundamentally racist or sexist. While we believe that public college students and employees shall be able to decide what topics which they wish to engage in, we maintain that it should be just that, a decision. This bill takes aim at any mandated rejection of an adherence to divisive concepts as a prerequisite for graduation, promotion, tenure, or to be hired. Additionally, the bill requires a survey of students and employees to assess each campus's climate relatively to the ability to speak freely, regardless of political affiliation. This is to provide the legislature with a baseline of the atmosphere at our public universities to ensure individuals feel free to have their own opinion. And the results of this are posted publicly on the institution's website. This bill is not meant to impede endeavors that combat discrimination. In fact, its goal is just the opposite. The bill puts necessary guardrails in place to ensure diversity efforts don't become divisive efforts. And with that, Mr. Chairman, and committee, we can dive into the different sections of the bill that you may have questions about.
Thank you for that presentation.
And also, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
there is an amendment and that I think we need to add.
I'm sorry, is that Amendment 13606?
That is correct.
All right, in order to add this to the bill, I need a motion on it and a second. We have a motion and a second. With that, let's go ahead and take a quick vote to,
Mr. Chairman, let me just describe the amendment if I could.
oh, I'm sorry.
The amendment, all it does is it just says it requires an investigation of any reported violations. Simply all it does.
With that explanation, are there any questions about the amended portion? Okay. We already took care of the motion and the second, so with that, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in the affirmative to add the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, please say no. All right, and it is on the bill. All right, with that, I have a question from Representative Ball, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lafferty. Leader Kent, higher education has I guess, a long tradition of academic freedom where we present different ideas in the classroom. And I thought I'd try and get a sense of how this bill would impact that. One of the forms that I think academic freedom might take in an economics class, just as an example, would be where an economics faculty member might present different economic systems in different countries around the world. For example, we might present the characteristics of a market economy and compare that to the characteristics of Marxism. And this might include the shortcomings of Marxism. One of my, I guess, favorite examples of that might be to look at a picture of the Korean peninsula at night just after dusk from space that shows the southern half of the peninsula all lit up. South Korea's got a market economy, and the northern part of the peninsula being dark, it's got a Marxist economy or a communist system, and it's dark because they don't have the resources and electricity to power lights all night long. I guess my question is this: in an economics class, would this bill in any way prohibit the ability of a professor to talk about different theories or different economic systems, outlining the advantages or disadvantages of those systems, if the professor isn't requiring or mandating that the student adopt a certain opinion about those systems?
Mr. Chairman, no, it does not. This is what this bill actually promotes, is that dialogue between two different views. So it obviously respects that academic freedom in that sense. You know, I hope that kind of answers your question. I mean, you can obviously go back and forth on divisive issues, but as long as it's taught in not a way of indoctrination, you know, I think that's what this bill actually protects, is that discussion of both views, not trying to shut down one side or the other.
You're recognized.
And maybe a follow-up question. Thank you for that confirmation. This bill sort of reminds me of a similar bill we passed last year that affected K through 12, sort of mirrors or parallels some of those provisions in last year's legislation for K through 12. I guess I thought it might be useful for us to find out how that legislation has been implemented, in the sense that have there been complaints across the state in grades K through 12, and how some of, with regard to the provisions of that law, I'm thinking if we find out a little bit more about how that legislation has been implemented, it might help us understand better the implications of this legislation for higher education.
Right.
You're recognized.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of outside the scope of this legislation to a certain degree. I wouldn't be familiar with any of the results. I mean, Chairman White may be able to expand on some of that, being the chairman. But I haven't heard of any.
I didn't know if there had been any violations or if any reports had been made at the state level violating the legislation last year. But again, that may be off subject, but I'm just asking because the two bills strike me as being similar. One applies to grades K through 12. The other one applies to higher education. Just wondering if we had any information about our experiences with last year's bill.
Chairman, I'll consult with Speaker Sexton and see if he might have some input on that and get back to you on that. So,
All right, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next up on the list, I have Representative Hakeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gant, seeking clarity. Would I be overstating to say that what this bill would do is to limit or remove what's called a course on critical race theory? It's college level course. I believe it's in graduate school and so forth. Would this bill limit that from being, the concepts from being taught in college?
I'm sorry, you're recognized.
no.
Okay. And the survey that you spoke of, it talks about freedom of speech. Is that the correct term?
Yes.
Okay. But you don't see, when I see this list of items of what's considered divisive,
What section of the bill are you referring
I'm sorry. This is under 3, the number 3. Right below that, it has divisive concepts, and it lists various items that I think should not be discussed. Do we still feel that is providing freedom of speech with this list of items that I believe are not to be discussed?
Well, under Section 3, it defines divisive concepts, race or sex scapegoating, or race or sex stereotyping, consistent with state law governing K through 12 divisive concepts, and the 2020 Trump Administration Executive Order 13950, combating race and sex stereotyping.
Okay, I heard what you said, but I'll go to another question. Are we and if we move forward on this bill, does it, in regards to history, in this bill, is this bill saying we like history as it's being taught now and not looking at concepts that are different or varied from what is being taught now?
You recognized.
No. But I want to go back to your previous question, try to help you understand a little bit about that. I mean, we can't obviously mandate them, but, you know, they can be obviously still be discussed, if that is what you were alluding to.
Okay, that was my question, if they could be discussed.
Yes.
All right, sir. Okay, if I may, one last
Please.
question. Do we have any data that says, putting forth a concept of this nature, dealing with divisive concepts and so forth, is it a best practice anywhere in the nation? Has this been studied? Is this, I'm going to use the term, is this an emotional reaction to the concept of critical race theory?
To my knowledge, no.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I believe Leader Gant actually just addressed what I was going to bring up. Unless I'm misreading the bill, it doesn't say that those concepts cannot be discussed or debated or, you know, thoroughly hashed out in class. It just says that there will be no adverse action taken against an employee of that university or a student of that university if they say, I don't believe this, or they argue the counterpoint. And so I think it is ensuring that our universities, you know, remain places of open dialogue, but not institutions where of forced agreement with an idea. And so you can still debate and talk about both the negative and positive aspects of an idea, but this bill ensures that you will not be forced into agreeing with it for fear of some sort of adverse action. Would that be accurate to say, Leader Grant?
Yes, then I'm glad good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me just go to section 4 and just kind of redefine what we're doing in relation to that. Prohibits adverse treatment of public higher education student or employee for failing to assent to a divisive concept. Prohibits any requirement to adopt a specific ideology, political viewpoint to graduate, receive tenure, or a promotion. Further prohibits a public institution of higher education from asking for the ideological or political viewpoint of a student, job applicant, job candidate, or a candidate for promotion or tenure. Authorizes individual who believes Section 1 and 2 has been violated to pursue legal remedies available in court. So if there isn't a vehicle for that disagreement to take that up, if that makes sense.
Representative Cochran, any follow-up?
No follow-up. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
Does that answer your?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you.
Next on our list, Chairman White.
Thank you, Chairman. As I try to get my head around this bill, and it's like the one we did in K through 12 last year, and also we have another one on the calendar today, trying to understand, will this be an accurate statement? Is someone who appreciates history, and I think this is what's been tough over last year and this year to get the message across. Correct me if I'm inaccurate on the way I see these bills. No one is opposed to the free and open discussion of concepts, history, all the issues. It's free and open. It's when the pendulum swings so far to where there is push that where you cannot have free and open discussion because there is a movement to say that you're wrong, we're right. And now we're into the higher education, the colleges. There are examples where free and open discussion has been shut down. So now the pendulum is starting to swing back and there's a push, and that's where legislation like this comes from, whether it be K through 12 higher ed. So if you go back through history and time, the pendulum swings back and forth. And so what I see this is, let's not violate the free and open discussion, but let's not try to indoctrinate our young people into a certain belief, because that's what I believe or you believe. Would that be a free and accurate description of what we're trying to do with such legislation?
You recognized?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And obviously, Mr. Chairman, I think this has been an ongoing discussion, and normally our universities are not going to be conducive to this type of legislation, but, you know, I think this is something that brings a more fairness approach to the way we look at these, you know, just like Representative White just described. It gives an open conversation to both sides of an issue that may be divisive, and not an indoctrination type approach to it where one side is only presented and not the other side. So I think this legislation is fair. While the universities may not like it, you know, I think this is a fair and balanced approach to the issues that we all grasp with in the education of higher education. So, but Mark makes a great point, and thank you for making that point.
Certainly. Next on our
Chairman
list,
White, I'm sorry.
Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Gant. And
I wish I was a chairman, but I'm not a chairman. But
are you not? Okay, well, there's your promotion. You're a chairman in my eyes. All right. And so and I just want clarity. So, do you mind if you indulge? Just give me a couple minutes. Do you mind? I won't. I'll be nice. Thank you. He nodded his head after I said I'll be nice. So I'm trying to see a scenario because I was looking at the tenets of the bill, and it says I'm glad to see this in here. Promotes, so you know, this is one of the divisive deals that, you know, promotes or advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government. Glad to see that in there. But there was some language in here or something in the tenets that I saw. I think it's maybe, let's go back here on this page, that would say, oh, okay, an individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely because of the individual's race or sex. And so if there's a discussion going on in one of our university classrooms, and let's say it talks of, you know, discussion is, let's say, slavery, and you know, someone feels uncomfortable with the conversation. Now, there's no one directing you know, the discussion one way or the other. It's just an open discussion, open dialogue about slavery. And someone says they feel uncomfortable, will you know, the university then be outside of the tenets of this law if this law is passed?
no.
Okay, because I was looking at it, and let me go back and read it, make sure I'm reading it clearly. The bill defines divisive concept as concept that, and under F, an individual should, okay, I stand clear. I stand clear, because it says if they should feel discomfort for the guilt and anguish. Let me ask you this, and let me ask you this. So, with the deal that the governor is working on with Hillsdale College to create this institution of informed patriotism with UT, and Hillsdale College is of course, you know, Christian college, and you know, that I think is being courted to come to the state to create this college inside of our university. How does that work with this law if this law is passed? Because there's a specific space that they're going into regarding, I guess, informed patriotism. And, you know, if that is what their goal is, and you know, or let's flip it on another side. Let's say if it was a college that, you know, was specific at, you know, and funded at the University of Memphis for that was specifically built around the slave trade in America. How do those two things, because their curriculum will be built around slavery in America, just like this one is built around patriotism in America. How do those two intersect with this bill?
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Representative Parkinson, I don't want to intersect these two pieces of legislation into this one. I'm actually going to be carrying that piece of legislation for the governor that you're referring to, the civics education bill. So I'd rather us focus, when that legislation is before you, drill me all you want, but let's focus on this legislation. This is Speaker Sexton's bill, so I don't want to intersect the two because they do different things, obviously. So we can have that discussion, when I bring that legislation for the governor before this committee.
And thank you for that. And I promise you, I'm not trying to grill you. I'm just trying to get.
Oh, you're fine.
Right, get a better understanding. Based on the tenets of what's in the bill. And let me be clear. I'll call you Chairman, Representative Gant. I agree with the fact that there should be open dialogue, and discussion, and not just in our universities, but to me in our K through 12 classrooms also, just open discussion and allowing people to be informed truthfully on our history. And I always say, and you've heard me say it before, that our history is dynamic. It's an extremely dynamic history in our country, and it truly is. And I'm I love studying and learning more about our history and our country, but I'm concerned that we're actually stifling those open conversations when we start regulating those conversations. Now, let me also be clear, Representative Gant, that
Representative, is there a question? We've got some other people who'd like to ask some
yes,
questions.
Sir. Yes, sir. Now, let me just close with this. I hope that we can actually get to, or stay in the space to where we're freely able to discuss all of these issues, and because that's what's going to bring on healing for our country. But and I also want to ensure that no one is intentionally made to feel uncomfortable, because I'm not trying to make people, we don't want people to feel uncomfortable, but we also want to make sure that the truth is being spoken, inside our classrooms and universities. And and unfortunately, some of our history is uncomfortable, and it is not all good. But the truth needs to be spoken, and I just hope that we're not stifling the truth with any legislation that comes before this body. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Leader
if I can
Gant.
respond. Obviously, this does not. This is to protect what you just described. This does not limit the discussion. Just the requirements. Putting a requirement on something, agreeing with a certain ideology in order to graduate. That's what this cuts out.
Last one he said.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. But those requirements in the Hillsdale College, I know we want to discuss it on another one, is going to be informed patriotism. That's going to be a requirement, I would assume. And so, I just think about it. How is this bill going to gel with that as it comes down the road? You don't have to answer that right now, Representative
I look
Gant.
forward to that discussion.
Yes, thank you, sir.
So.
Thank you for that. Next on the list, Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Representative Gant. Earlier, we talked about free and open dialogue. And I'm trying to be clear on an issue. I think something about dealing with both sides of an issue. If we use the Holocaust as an example, how would that dialogue take place when you talk about both sides of it? If you could give me an example.
Well, this protects that exchange. There's nothing that limits you from that dialogue.
Okay. I guess the term both sides, what would that mean in that concept, on that subject?
Representative Keem, the only way I know to describe this is that this bill does not stifle, that free exchange of ideas.
All right, sir.
This legislation is to protect that.
All right, sir. And one or two more, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Where there's mandatory training for students or employees, my understanding is if there's one or more of the divisive concepts, that this would be in violation of this.
Which section are you referring
Oh,
to?
I'm sorry. I believe let's see, conducting, that's, this bill prohibits a public institution of higher education. Is number 1 under, I apologize. I'm
Is
looking
that
at too
section
many
5 you're
different-
looking for?
Sir?
Is that section 5 you're looking for?
What does it say?
Public institution shall not conduct mandatory training?
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah. I guess if it's one or more of what's considered divisive concepts, it's not to be taught. Am I correct?
I'm not sure I understand your
Okay.
question.
All right, I'll just leave that one alone then. One last question. In this day and age, with computers, the laptops, all that other stuff, is it realistic to say to our young people that in college you can't talk about those critical issues that, when I say talk about those critical issues, well, let's leave it at that. They can't talk about those critical issues. Is that a problem with this bill? I'm asking a question.
You're talking about the discussion of it in the classroom?
Yes, sir.
No, that's what we just got through discussing. I mean, this protects that free exchange of ideas, whether you're for that idea or against it. I mean, this does not prohibit the dialogue that takes place in the classroom.
Okay. Now, I think I'd be accurate in saying that is already something that takes place in the colleges. But what is the part that would violate this bill? What kind of actions would be taken that violates this bill in regards to that?
Well, when you get into a forced ideological approach to something in order to graduate or further that student, that's what this prohibits.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for that. Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you. And again, just a little bit of a broken record here. Again, it does, and this is a question, you tell me if it's accurate. It does not prevent the discussion of concepts. It prevents adverse action being taken against a student or staff member if they say, I don't believe that. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't have any more questioners. Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote on the bill. With that, all those in favor of passage and sending this to full committee, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. And the ayes have it.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Yes, sir. Thank you. With that, any other comments? Anyone looking to adjourn? So moved. We're adjourned.